Greetings and salutations to all the denizens of podcast land out there. It is Friday night. You know what that means. It is time for the Fortress of Rock. Yes, your weekly Friday night excursion into the past, the present, and the future of the music that we all know and love, rock and roll. Devil horns up. I know. On a podcast, the visual doesn't really work, but I had my devil horns up. This is episode 146. I am your gracious and humble host, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Last day of May, May the 31st, 2024. Congratulations to all the high school and college graduates out there. I have personally got a graduate this weekend. My daughter is graduating college, so congrats to her. And to everybody out there who in this ridiculously backwards, stupid world has somehow managed, yes, to take on that debt, even though our current president just says, well, write it off, write it off, write it off. Where's my money? I paid off my student debt. Where's my money? Where's my refund? Sleepy Joe. Sorry. Let's get away from politics. Congrats to my daughter for getting her diploma. We'll see where life takes her. But you all know where life has taken us. It has taken us right here, right now, to this point in time to discuss rock and roll. Segment one, of course, is News of the World, our tribute to the late, great Freddie Mercury and Queen. This is going to be a very unbalanced episode in that I don't think segment one will take a lot of time. Whereas we're going to have an extra long segment too, because I have not only a double album from Collective Soul to review, but 2 movies. So, might go a little bit longer in breakdown. Might be a little short here at the beginning. And of course, we've got a lot of touring news, concert news for you. Let's get everything else out of the way first, and then we'll move on to all of that. We'll start off with a moment of silence, a passing in the world of rock and roll. Of course, a great friend of mine who I've known for over a decade loves to throw out some catchphrases now and then. And one of his catchphrases is always "Inagata Davida, baby." And of course, that's a reference to the classic Long song. Now there's a radio edit, but in its full form, very, very long song from Iron Butterfly, Inagata Davida. A classic rock song by anyone's standards. And unfortunately, the leader of Iron Butterfly, vocalist, organist, composer for Iron Butterfly, who, yes, put together Inagata Davida, Doug Engel, unfortunately passed away here recently. So our thoughts and our prayers and our Fortress of Rock honor guard will fly the flag at half-mast. Seems like we're doing that every week now, up on one of the turrets here at the Fortress of Rock. But of course, as we get older, so do our rock and roll icons. So it seems like every week we're losing somebody of importance. And this week it's Doug Engel of Iron Butterfly. Now, PBS is kind of odd. And no, we're not going to get back into politics. But PBS is odd. They do have some very interesting programming when it comes to music. And on occasion, I have talked about it. We've talked about Austin City Limits, which is a show that has been around forever. And on occasion, they will have a true blue rock and roll icon on there. We talked about Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo here recently being on Austin City Limits, but we're not talking about that show, but we are talking about PBS and how it's very odd in that they don't have a set schedule. Depending on where you live, your PBS channel has more free reign, more carte blanche than your local CBS or ABC or Fox affiliate does. They're pretty much locked in. They get very, very little wiggle room when it comes to, we don't want to air your programming from 8 to 11. Well, then you're probably not going to end up being an affiliate for very long for the big four networks. But PBS, it's a little different. PBS gives their channels a little bit more leeway to air stuff when they want to air it, if they want to air it. So, that being said, once again, how big I am into disco, as that was one of the big popular musical stylings, one of the genres that was unbelievably popular as I was growing up in the mid 70s. PBS has got a 3-episode series called Disco, Soundtrack of a Revolution. Now, my initial report that I read said in the United States, this 3-part episode series was going to start on June the 18th. And then we're going to get an episode every Tuesday night after that. And again, PBS is very odd in how they do things. There was a recent music series that I think I brought up back last year in 2023 that never ever showed up on my local PBS affiliate. Because one of the interviews was with John Mellencamp, and I really wanted to watch that. I believe it was Bob Costas interviewing John Mellencamp. I'd have to double check my old notes to be sure, but I think that's what it was. And of course, again, my local PBS affiliate decided, nah, we're not going to air that. They have more latitude, so that's fine. I think it's stupid, but if they choose to do that, there you go. So this 3-part miniseries, Disco, Soundtrack of a Revolution, supposedly starting June the 18th. Well, from what I have heard now on follow-up research, getting into my DVR after I read the follow-up research, now they're saying that I'll be able to watch the first 2 episodes of this 3-part miniseries, this documentary series, this coming Tuesday. So, I don't know. Just keep an eye out, kids. For the last time, I will say PBS is very funky. No pun intended. With Disco, Soundtrack of a Revolution. Just keep an eye out. Jump on your DVR. Set it. And hopefully it'll pick up the recordings when they air, whenever they air on your local PBS affiliate. And then in terms of reissues, physical reissues, box sets, that type of deal, because now that almost everything has come out for the summer months, isn't that sad that summer is just starting, but we're probably not going to get a lot of new music? Everybody tried to get all their new albums out in April and May. Still a few coming, but the Police are unleashing a massive 6 CD box set featuring their final album together, Synchronicity. That will be out July the 26th. There are, again, this is what you would expect in this day and age. There are so many different versions, variances, permutations. It's ridiculous. There is a 6 CD set, a 4 LP set, and then a smaller 2 CD or 2 LP set. The 6 CD set, say that 10 times fast, 6 CD set. 2 of the CDs will feature a concert live in Oakland, California at the Oakland Alameda Coliseum. Roughly, I would say roughly a CD and a half are just basic demos and alternate takes of the songs from Synchronicity. And in the end, maybe we get about half of a CD worth of B-sides and unreleased tracks. And that's really what we want. We want the vault stuff. We want the new stuff or the stuff we've never heard before or stuff that we haven't been able to get before or has gone out of print, like a B-side. So for all its 6 CD glory, from what I have read, this Synchronicity box set is a whole lot of nothing. It's a money grab, but I'm not saying it's the Police. I'm not ripping on the Police. Every band is doing this. Every band is doing this because you can't make a ton of money releasing new material by physical means. So they're reissuing the stuff from their glory days and adding in concert audio, or in some cases video, because some of these bands release Blu-rays along in these box sets. But we really want the vault stuff, is what we really, really want. And I just don't see how this Synchronicity box set, even in the smaller 2 CD or 2 LP version, really delivers. But you be the judge. You be the judge, as always. Now we're going to wrap up things with concert and touring news. And I have one big topic to discuss here at the end. But let's knock out everything else, and then I'll bring in the stories that I have that will lead me into our big debate and our big topic of the week. If you are a fan of Dead & Company, of course I am not. If you haven't figured that out by now, you have not been listening to the Fortress of Rock long enough. Go back in the archives. I am not a fan of hippy-dippy music. But the Dead & Company, even though they retired from touring, the money was too good. The venue was too good. Of course, getting to play at the Sphere in Las Vegas. I have to admit, I don't care who you are, good, bad, ugly, that is too good to pass up. With all the visuals, it's a once in a lifetime thing, not only for the audience, but I would imagine for the performers as well. So Dead & Company have extended their residency at the Sphere in Las Vegas. 6 more shows have been added. August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and August 8th, 9th, and 10th. So there you go, Deadheads. This honestly, could be the last chance that you get to see Dead & Company. So for you, get out there, do your bitness. Now, another band that I am not a big fan of, and it's a theme. We're just going to have to go down this road, okay? At least for this segment. A lot of negativity in this segment, let's put it that way. Jane's Addiction. Never was a big fan, and I don't care if the original lineup is back together. Whoop-de-frickin-do. Oh, and then they're doing a co-headlining tour with Love and Rockets. Again, cue the confetti and the piñatas. Whoop-de-frickin-do. So Jane's Addiction and Love and Rockets, if that's your cup of tea, August and September of 2024, 25 North American dates. So have at it. All you Jane's Addiction and Love and Rockets fans, have at it. Now I'm going to continue on with the negativity, but this one might shock you because we're getting away from the hippie music and the goofy, punkish, grungy, new wave stuff, and then we're going into heavy metal. And I'm still going to be negative. Because despite the fact I hated Tipper Gore, and I still hate Tipper Gore for what she did or tried to do to music with the PRMC. Yes, you remember that group she tried to put together, put together a list of all the nastiest, most awful, despicable, disgusting, degrading music out there. All heavy metal, I believe, because we didn't want to offend the rap community. God forbid they can be misogynists and they can curse and swear all they want, but that's okay. But heavy metal, no, 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 no. We're going to call you out on the carpet and we're going to shame you, shame you, shame you, and pull you out in front of Congress to explain yourselves. And one of those bands was Wasp. And this is where I say I never ever got into Wasp. I never really liked them. And whereas Judas Priest, I think, and Twisted Sister were unfairly dragged through all sorts of debris and nails and razor blades, and Wasp went too far. Wasp went way too far. They were the problem. Wasp was the problem. It wasn't Judas Priest or Twisted Sister or Ozzy Osbourne. Wasp was the problem. But they're still around, and they're going back out on tour, and they are going to play their debut album in full. October, November, and December. 39 North American dates. And they will be playing that song, which I cannot mention on this podcast because I'm trying to keep it clean for the kiddos. They will be playing that song, even though they stopped playing it for a while. It ends with Like an Animal. They actually pulled back on that song because I think they realized they went over a line. But now they've come back and no, we're going to play it because really it's part of our legacy. Great legacy. I'm all for free speech. And if they want to play the song, I still side with them over Tipper Gore or censorship anyway, anyhow, anytime. But I will just say they push things too far. And everybody else seemed to have to pay the price for Wasp and one or two other bands like them. Now we get to the big issue. And we talked last week about the long awaited lawsuit where the Department of Justice, along with a handful of states, sue to break up Live Nation and Ticketmaster. But now the problem seems to be heading back into the camps of the artists, the performers, the bands. Now, before we get to that, though, a lot of cancellations here. But the first couple are health related. Although I still think it's interesting that Bruce Springsteen has to cancel more tour dates due to health issues. Bruce Springsteen had to postpone 4 European shows: May the 25th, May the 28th, June the 1st, and June the 3rd, on doctor's orders due to vocal cord issues. Sounds a lot like John Bon Jovi, who we talk about, it seems like, each and every week, and we'll talk about him more later. If you can't perform, nobody's going to hold it against you, except maybe your wife. Nobody's going to hold it against you. We would prefer, as fans, that if we get you at 100% or as close to 100% as we can get, not 75, 80, 82%. Sit at home, rest up, and if you can't do it anymore, you've got more money than God. We'll miss you, but in the end, don't go out as a vestige of your former self. Whether I'm talking about Bruce Springsteen, John Bon Jovi, or whoever, don't waste your time or our time just on a money grab, because it will denigrate your legacy. Another health-related cancellation involves Heart. Heart has also had to cancel a number of European dates. In fact, their entire European leg of their 2024 tour. Now, they did recently play some shows here in the US, and they will be coming back, and they will, so far, honor all those US dates, but the European leg is done. Now, that's canceled, whereas Springsteen postponed the 4 dates, and he'll reschedule. Hart had to cancel the whole deal in Europe. So that's June and July. Those dates all gone. Now with Bruce Springsteen, it was put out there that it was vocal cord issues. We don't know what the issue is with Ann Wilson, lead singer of Heart, but there is a medical issue she had to attend to. And so, of course, we wish her the best and hope Heart comes back at 100% when they come back to the States later this year. But now we get into the big topic as we wind things down here in News of the World. The Black Keys, another band that I am not a big fan of. I've wasted my money and bought a couple of their albums over the years, and I still don't understand why the critics fawn all over them. Oh, the Black Keys, they're the second coming. Oh, they're the greatest rock and roll, but they are a tribute band at best. There's not a lot, I'm sorry, in my opinion, of originality to the Black Keys. They're a mishmash of older influences. You can see it in their album art. You can hear it in how they're produced, how they sound, how they write their songs. Do they have some good songs? Yes, a few good songs, but nothing to warrant this goo goo gaga over the top reaction that we get from the rock and roll critics, who, of course, again, don't know jack compared to you and me. And guess what? Now we have been proven to be right. We have empirical evidence. The Black Keys have had to cancel their entire 2024 North American Arena Tour, dubbed the International Players Tour, because of ridiculously, pathetically low sales. And part of that stems from the fact that they were price gouging. Now, again, are we going to blame Live Nation? Are we going to blame Ticketmaster? I don't think we can in this case. Because from what I understood in my research, The Black Keys were trying to sell tickets for major arenas, indoor arenas, basketball arenas, hockey arenas, seating 8, 10, 12,000 fans. And the nosebleeds were listed at $100 roughly minimum for the Black Keys. And one person, you can look it up online, one person posted a great picture on social media. I think it was in Baltimore, Maryland this past week, right before they announced the cancellation of the tour, showing how many seats were available after weeks and weeks and weeks of tickets being on sale. How many seats were available for the Black Keys in Baltimore, Maryland at their big indoor arena? And as you would expect, most of the top level seats were gone. That's how it always is. That's what I cannot understand about these idiot promoters and these idiot artists. Anytime you go to buy tickets for a major show, the first tickets to go are going to be the nosebleed seats because the true blue diehard fans want to go, but they can't afford $300, $400, $500 seats on the floor or in the lower bowl. But again, all these genius promoters, the geniuses at Live Nation and Ticketmaster, with the dynamic pricing, the performers themselves, their egos say, we're worth it. They'll pay it. Well, in this case, no. Nobody was paying it for the Black Keys. So now they've canceled their entire North American arena tour. They say they're going to come back, reschedule at smaller venues. Oh. So you think that's going to work now, huh? So let's do some more intimate shows. That's PR talk, kids. We'll do some more intimate venues, which means we only have to sell a third of the tickets and we'll probably still have unreasonably ridiculous high prices. Now, I'm going to tie this into something that's not necessarily rock and roll, but it is touring news we just heard today. Breaking news: Jennifer Lopez has canceled her entire summer tour. Now, of course, Jennifer Lopez is more of a gossip rag focal point. So people are saying she's having issues with her marriage with Ben Affleck. But I'm putting it out there that maybe Jennifer Lopez just did the same thing that the Black Keys did, thinking she's up there with Taylor Swift and Beyonce, and maybe she's not. And her ego got the best of her, just like it got the best of the Black Keys. So we'll keep an eye out here to see if we can tie this Jennifer Lopez summer tour cancellation. And again, a complete cancellation. The entire tour gone. Not just select dates, not just a short series of dates due to health issues or personal issues. The entire tour gone. Maybe the fans are finally getting smart, wisening up, and realizing that as much as I would love to see these people live in concert, I don't need to make their monthly payment for their Maserati. Okay, ran over, and I actually did go a full segment here with News of the World. So, next segment, I will do my best to keep it at 30 minutes. We'll see how it goes. Collective Soul's double album, Here to Eternity, and 2 movies. Coming up next after a quick, cheesy, very short music interlude. I'm the Maestro, Kevin Crane, the Fortress of Rock. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fortress of Rock. Segment 2 here is breakdown as always each and every week. Just a quick update. I know you don't like to know about the technical side of things. I don't blame you. Just got an update from Spotify. We will keep our current recording platform with Spotify until mid-July. So for another month or month and a half, you will still get cheesy, goofy, short music interludes to split up the four segments that you know and love here on the Fortress of Rock. I know you are all ecstatic about that, as am I. Ain't technology grand? All right, breakdown, of course, is our tribute to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. This is where we review the best in new music, new songs, concerts, and we have got a full slate for you. We might actually go over our allotted 30 minutes for this particular segment. Double album, brand new double album from Collective Soul, one of my favorite bands, Here to Eternity. I was skeptical when I first heard about this because the news came fairly late in the game. They only put 2 singles out before the release of the album. I thought for sure we'd get delays, but we did not. The album is out. Digital, physical, however you want it. The great Collective Soul, Ed Roland, Dean Roland and company, Will Turpin, everybody in Collective Soul at full strength, full force here for 20 songs on Here to Eternity. Now, because it's 20 songs, I will cover it track by track, but might not get into quite as much detail, not because of anything I'm doing, but because maybe some of these songs just kind of don't warrant the time, sad to say. As an overview, let me tell you this. You can tell, number one, this album is majorly influenced by 60s pop, 60s folk. Yes, a little bit of that hippy dippy influence that I talked about with Dead and Company in segment 1. Some of it is fine, some of it does not work at all. And it seems like more so than ever, even though he has always been the de facto leader of Collective Soul, Ed Roland seems like he has basically taken over this band, lock, stock, and smoking barrel. All songs recorded and written, produced by Ed Roland, with no other help involved, no other band members involved. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. That bothers me. And you can tell with these 20 songs where maybe his bandmates should have exerted some influence and kind of reined him in or pushed him in a different direction. So let's get started with track 1, Mother's Love. We've reviewed it. Very, very solid lead-off song. It was the first single. It is a recycled riff, and we do get some of those sporadically here on from Here to Eternity. We get about 3 songs where you can hear the echoes of older Collective Soul songs being rearranged, revamped. It just sounds a little bit like carbon copies. Now, Mother's Love works, but you can hear that the riff is a variation, dare I say, recycled from Where the River Flows. But it works. It works. I'll take it. And then you guys know I have been gushing about track 2, Bluer Than So Blue. Best song on the album by far. That was the second single, released just a few weeks ago. I love it. This is Collective Soul at their best. The harmonies, the guitar, everything, the production, this is what we were expecting. Maybe it was expecting too much to think they could do that over 20 songs. Maybe the problem isn't with us, the problem is with the band. Maybe they should never have thought they could pull this off with 20 songs. I have a plan at the end, and I will explain it to you how this would have been a ridiculously fantastic single album. Track 3 is Let It Flow. Got a great bass line in there. More of the same, not quite to the level of Bluer Than So Blue, but it is your typical Collective Soul, catchy, solid, very good. Track 4 is Not the Same. And this is where I observe where Ed Roland is starting to sound, in some instances, not all the time, but in some instances, sounding a lot as he gets older like Tom Petty, vocally, in some cases. Not the Same is one of those cases. And then, of course, the guitar, the slide guitar, which sounds like Mike Campbell, just reinforces the point. But again, we're 4 songs in, very good. I love Not the Same. Then we get into the heavy duty, once again, I will say hippy dippy stuff. And this is blatant. This is a recorded live original song. And this is the first instance where I go, Ed Roland is pushing his ideas, musically and otherwise, too much onto this band. Because this is basically him and him alone with a harmonica and acoustic guitar. Bob Dylan, Where Are You Today? And if you couldn't tell by the title, yeah, this is Peace and Love, man. The great poet Bob Dylan, man. We need you more than ever, man. Yeah, well, I don't. And this song is subpar for Collective Soul. Where is the rest of the band? This is an Ed Roland solo project. This is not Collective Soul. Luckily, track 6, Hey Man, one of the best songs on the entire double album. Another great bass intro, Will Turpin, awesome. Along with a great guitar riff. Still got a little bit of the hippie vibe to it. Hey man, you've been getting in my face. But this one works because it sounds more like the group dynamic we expect from Collective Soul. And then track 7, also very good, Kick It. A great riff, a great hook. Things get a little odd after that for a while. Track 8, Matter of Fact, they get odd in a decent to good way with Matter of Fact. A little bit of a blues and jazz bass to it, but great solid rock guitar. It's a fun song. So I'm all in with that, as well as track 9, which is again another fun song, but for a different reason. Track 9 is the most bizarre song on Here to Eternity. Track 9, again, harkens back to the 60s, and it sounds like a goofy Monkees or Beatles type song called Sister and Mary. It's got a cool chugging riff to it, and it's a bizarre, wild, crazy, understated, if all of that can fit together. I believe it's a bisexual or a lesbian love story. You just have to listen to it to believe me. And all in all, I think it's good. I liked it. It's fun, showing off a different side of the band. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Especially if you're going to keep it light and fun. Then track 10, which I kind of look at as closing out the first album, is Be the One. Another song that sounds more like an Ed Roland solo project than a complete band effort. Piano based. The lyrics, there's a nice little catch in the lyrics in the chorus, but that's about it. And then we transition to what I would think is the second disc, the second LP. Now, we'll tell you something. As you guys know, I buy CDs, that this entire 20 song double album fits on one CD. Now, that's not unusual. If you go back and look at double albums from the 60s and 70s, based on the fact you can get 80 minutes on a single CD, it's not odd. It's not cheating to say it's a double album. So, track 11, another one of the strongest tracks on Here to Eternity is, can I say track again? Keep It On Track. Keep It On Track. Another great bass line from Will Turpin. Um, more in the lines with old school traditional Collective Soul. Then after this, the album really hits a really big rut. And it's depressing and it's sad. Now, Collective Soul, and I say this about all of my favorite bands, Collective Soul on their worst day is still better than 99% of the bands out there. And that's what I'm going to say about the next 5 songs. Remember how I told you I was kind of going to lump some songs together at one point? Well, this is the time. Who Loves, track 12, La Di Da, track 13, Bring On the Day, track 14, Words Away, track 15, and No Man's Land, track 16. Now I can real quick discuss some of the differences, but for the most part, they all sound pretty much the same, and that's not a good thing. Who Loves comes off as generic Collective Soul with hand claps. La Di Da kind of harkens back again to another hippy dippy goofy song. Bring On the Day has strings. Words Away has piano. Now it does have a good guitar solo. And then track 16 only reinforces the decades old rumor that Collective Soul is secretly a Jesus band, a religious band, because of the religious references in No Man's Land, track 16. Now, I like track 17 a lot. And this is a mellow song, Letter from E. This has got strings and piano. I think it's got a great chorus. This is a keeper to me. Don't have to rock out all the time. And this would have been, again, a welcome addition to my one single album version of Here to Eternity. Track 18, I Know You, You Know Me, right back into the whole generic run we just talked about. Decent guitar, again, near the end, just like with Words Away. And then we do get 2 phenomenal songs to close out Here to Eternity. Therapy and Over and Out. Now, Over and Out is another mellow song, but I love it, and I think it's a very fitting closing song. When I saw the title, I thought this was going to be a drop-dead rocker, and it ends up doing a 180 on me and tricking me, but I still love it. Therapy is a great lead-in to Over and Out in terms of it brings the rock and roll down, but only to a point. It's still an up-tempo, very well done song. So here's my solution for Here to Eternity. Not trying to be pretentious, not trying to be a know it all, but just having fun. Out of these 20 songs, I would have put together 12. Now, I'm not going to sit here and remix. I'm just going to pick the 12 songs off of Here to Eternity that I would have kept put together on one outstanding single Collective Soul album. I would have taken the first 4 songs: Mother's Love, Bluer Than So Blue, Let It Flow, Not the Same. Skip Bob Dylan. Ugh. Go with the next 4 songs: Hey Man, Kick It, Matter of Fact, Sister and Mary. Skip Be the One. Keep It on Track. That one's a keeper. Skip the next 5. Keep Letter for Me. Skip I Know You, You Know Me, and keep the last 2. And I would keep them as the final 2 songs: Therapy and Over and Out. So for those of you keeping score at home, I'm keeping 8 of the first 10 songs, which would be the first LP, the first half, but I'm only keeping 4 of the songs from the second half, or the second disc, second LP, however you want to look at it. I'm looking at it old school. But that still gives you 12 great, solid songs with a diverse enough mix. We're keeping Sister and Mary, the goofy lesbian fun. We're keeping the mellow stuff like Letter from E and Over and Out. I just feel like I should have been hired in here. Ed Roland, of course, his ego's probably too big now, but I should have been hired in here to help Collective Soul distill this down, break it down to one phenomenal album instead of stretching this out to a solid, still great, still listenable. And I will listen to this album. I imagine it's probably going to make an appearance many times in the next few months as our number 1 album here on the Fortress of Rock. Once you get to our final segment, wrap it up. I recommend it. I heartily recommend you listen to it. If you're a Collective Soul fan, I would love to hear what you think. If you're not a Collective Soul fan, there is enough here where you will find very good stuff that might convert you to our camp. And maybe you'll like some of the stuff that I don't. So we'll see. We'll see. So, Collective Soul, Here to Eternity. Let's put it this way. It's not the number 1 album of the year. It's not going to be. Judas Priest, Invincible Shield was better. The Black Crowes, Happiness Bastards was better. Upon more listening, maybe Here to Eternity might sneak into the very, very back of the top 5 once we recap the best albums of 2024. So there you go. All right, so let's move on to movies. Yes, movies. On occasion, when it's warranted, we will review documentaries, concert movies here on the Fortress of Rock. And we just so happen to have 2, one new, one old, that have kind of fallen into my lap. So let's start off with the old. Now, if you're like me, you know I'm old school. I collect CDs. I also collect DVDs and Blu-rays of my favorite movies. But one of those rare exceptions to the rule where you can't find the movie on DVD, you can't find the movie on Blu-ray. Those of you who are old school horror fans remember The Hitcher with C. Thomas Howell and Rutger Hauer? You can't find that anywhere. Now it's on streaming, but it's a very poor quality stream. But for people like me, I want to have it so when I'm in the mood, I can pull it out and I can watch it. I don't want to have to go searching around 17 different streaming services to try to find my movie. Stop Making Sense fits into that category, at least until recently. Of course, Stop Making Sense, 40th anniversary. It was released originally in 1984. Concert film directed by Jonathan Demme, Oscar-winning director of The Silence of the Lambs, featuring the Talking Heads. Now, I was recently able to watch this on HBO Max. Max, sorry, take the HBO off. Max recently got a hold through their agreement with A24, this new hot young distribution producing studio. A24 is putting out a lot of movies now, starting to make a name for themselves. Recently put out Civil War, which was a big hit, even though it was fraudulent in how it was marketed. Stop Making Sense. They got a hold of that. They put it out in theaters, I believe, late last year. And it made more money in its re-release, its remastered re-release, than it did in its original theatrical release back in 1984, which I happened to see. Yes, I happened to see the original release of Stop Making Sense. Couple friends of mine and I happened to go a theater here locally, a couple miles away from the Fortress of Rock studios. Been defunct for decades, but good memories. Remember, we went to see it and we were all blown away. And I am not a huge Talking Heads fan. Let's put that out there right now. They would not make my list of the top 100 greatest recording artists of all time. I believe I have actually listed that for you, and they were not on there. But there is no denying the fact that between having a top level, top shelf filmmaker involved, getting 3 nights, I believe it was at the Pantages Theater in California. Jonathan Demme got to shoot different angles on different nights and pieced it all together. Now, I will say this. You will note, and it's understandable, again, given it's 3 nights, you're clipping the best performances audio wise, and then you're clipping the best performances visually and trying to piece that all together. There are slight occasions throughout watching Stop Making Sense where it's like an early VH1 MTV style video where the voice doesn't necessarily always sync up with the music. But once you read the details, you'll understand why. It's not cheating. They did perform live at the same venue, but you might be watching night 3 visually and listening to night 2 in terms of the music, the audio component. Once you get past that, this is not Mick Jagger in Start Me Up, where the worst lip syncing of all time. Okay, so if you get past that, this is, as billed, the greatest concert movie of all time. And this is coming from someone who is not a Talking Heads fanatic. But you cannot deny the energy of the performance, the brilliance that Jonathan Demme brings in directing this, and how the beginning of the show starts out so iconically with David Byrne bringing out the boombox. You see his sneakers walking into the picture, and he starts off with the boombox and an acoustic guitar, and then over the next 20 minutes or so, the other band members are gradually brought in as the crew brings the entire stage set in piece by piece, song by song. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It's understated, but brilliant. And if you've ever been to a concert, and I know most of you have, you know what a pain in the butt it is and how long we're forced to wait because the setup, the transition isn't right from the opening act to the headliner. It's just phenomenally well done from beginning to end. David Byrne, I saw a few criticisms. Most people agree that this is the greatest concert movie of all time. A few criticisms that he's not charismatic enough, he doesn't talk to the audience enough. I loved it. He is trying to create some kind of weird, bizarre persona. He is singing at the top of his lungs with his best, strongest possible voice. He takes a break at one point and lets Chris Franz, the drummer, and Tina Weymouth, the bass player, take over as the Tom Tom Club. If you're of my era, you remember they had the one big hit, Genius of Love. So they come in and give David Byrne a break. It's just, I cannot emphasize it enough. It's just phenomenal. You are seeing a band at the top of their form and paired with a film director who obviously gets them and understands what it means to capture a concert. I'm surprised this hasn't even gotten more accolades over the past 40 years because it is just phenomenal. Now, I heard recently that the Talking Heads, when the news broke that they were going to release a remastered 40th anniversary edition of Stop Making Sense, they were offered $80 million, I believe is the figure, to get back together for a tour. And they said, nope, can't do it, won't do it, don't want to do it. That's unfortunately how overdone, fractured they are. And I can see that. This is another example. We talked about 10 minutes ago about Collective Soul and how Ed Roland seems to be taking the band over. We've talked about Mark Knopfler this year and how he needs dire straits, those other bandmates to rein him in and push him in certain directions. Sting is not as good without the Police, without Andy Summers and Stuart Copeland. This is another example where you could tell David Byrne maybe was starting to push his way to the forefront, thinking he was the be all end all, and he didn't need the other three members. Of course, the fourth member, Jerry Harrison. But taking all the background drama, the future of the Talking Heads at this point in 1984, pushing that all aside, this is the greatest concert movie of all time. If you have not seen Stop Making Sense, you have got to watch this. It's only an hour and a half, but it is a wonderful, magnificent hour and a half on Max right now through A24. Check this out, kids. Now, we're going to move on to something new. Still old in terms of the topics, the people, the music, but brand new in that we finally have access to this new documentary. Now, this is Disney Plus. And right away, that should tell you something. That means it's been buffed and polished and cleaned up. So you're not going to get all the nasty, awful dirt, the magnificent, wonderful rumors, the infidelities that you would want to hear about, that I would want to hear about. Because the background drama makes the band. So Disney right away does a disservice to the Beach Boys. The Beach Boys, the brand new documentary on Disney Plus, just debuted here within the last couple weeks. And it just reeks, to a point, reeks of Disney pushing their political agenda, cleaning things up so we don't have anything rude and crude and nasty. I think at one point, an F bomb gets dropped. Brian Wilson, I think, drops an F bomb, but that keeps it PG-13 according to the motion picture rating system. One F bomb is allowed in a PG-13 film. And it makes no sense to me because Disney is now pretty much all in bed with going hardcore as they brought in all the Netflix Marvel stuff, including The Punisher. They've got Fox in all their Marvel, X-Men stuff. Of course, we've got Wolverine and Deadpool coming out, which is supposedly a hard R-rated movie coming to Disney Plus, probably at the end of 2024. But we've got to clean up the Beach Boys. We've got to keep that image sanitary. Now, all the criticisms aside, and I still got one or two left. All the criticisms aside, it's a wonderful watch. It's great to revisit the Beach Boys and their legend. Another criticism. Sorry, I know. I should have waited a couple minutes, but I've still got a couple negative points to put across. I will eventually finish Bon Jovi. The Hulu documentary, Thank You, Good Night. Of course, Hulu and Disney walk in lockstep, same company, you know what I mean. So I find it odd that a documentary about Bon Jovi was sanctioned and financed by these Disney geniuses, this Disney conglomerate. I cannot get through it because it's too much Bon Jovi. Too much. Well over 5 hours of content about Bon Jovi, but I can't get 2 hours about the Beach Boys. Yeah, this new documentary comes in under 2 hours. One of the greatest American rock and roll bands of all time. Sorry, Bon Jovi fans. That does not in any way, shape, or form equal Bon Jovi. The Eagles, Van Halen, Aerosmith, Beach Boys. Okay? After that, we'll talk. But I can't get 2 hours on the Beach Boys, but I have to suffer through over 5 hours of Bon Jovi? How does that make any sense? Yes, I know most of the members of Bon Jovi are still alive. They can all contribute, whereas maybe half the Beach Boys are still around. And of course, Brian Wilson has been suffering for a long time from dementia. So you get a lot of older clips of him. But his brothers Carl and Dennis have both passed. So you get Mike Love, and you get Al Jardine, and Bruce Johnston, I think, gets a decent time in the spotlight. But Glenn Campbell, of course, nobody seems to remember Glenn Campbell for a brief time was in the Beach Boys. They do cover that, but Glenn Campbell has left us, so he can't really talk about it. His time in the Beach Boys. But you get great insight to a point about the rivalry between the Beach Boys and the Beatles. That was probably the highlight of the documentary. But they still didn't give you quite enough. You did get Brian Wilson. Yes, he is a self-proclaimed genius. But I think the man was a musical genius. If anybody can claim to be a musical genius, it was Brian Wilson, and how he would stay back after the early days of the Beach Boys and write and write and write and create. And then the other guys would go out on tour and they'd come back home and go in the studio, and Brian would have everything set up, all the songs set up, the arrangements. And Mike Love would go ahead and write the lyrics in a lot of cases. And then they would go into the studio, new album out, go back out on tour, and then the cycle would continue. A very different dynamic from what you would normally expect from any other band. But Brian Wilson talking about I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles, and they actually have a clip of him, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm pretty close, where he says, yeah, it's not a very good song. I love that. I love the arrogance. I loved it. I just loved it. And it's got nothing to do with the Beatles and how I think they're overrated. I was never a huge Beach Boys fan either. Maybe I've come to appreciate them a little bit more as I've gotten older, along with a handful of other performers and bands. But I just like the arrogance, the animosity, the rivalry. And then they're comparing and contrasting uh, Sergeant Pepper with, I think Smile was the one that they were comparing and contrasting with. I could be wrong there, but you've got to watch this documentary, especially if you're a Beach Boys fan. If you're not, it's still worth watching. There are a few dark moments. They never get into a heck of a lot in terms of like drug abuse or infidelity. The one really dark area they get into is drummer Carl Wilson and his connection with Charles Manson. And for about 5, 6, 7 minutes, really scary, spooky stuff. And they put forth a theory about who Manson really was looking to kill. And then unfortunately, it ended up being Sharon Tate and a bunch of other people. But Manson really didn't get the target he wanted to, if you listen to what is said in this documentary. Last criticism and then breakdown is done. This is a Disney criticism because I know Disney did this because they needed to feel like we have to get some way to reach out to the younger kids and be all inclusive and be politically correct, which immediately I hate, hate, hate with a passion. They bring in a handful of music artists to discuss the Beach Boys, and they really don't have any connection to the Beach Boys. Now, they bring in Lindsey Buckingham, of course, formerly of Fleetwood Mac. I don't have a huge problem with that because I know Lindsey Buckingham was probably growing up in that era with the Beach Boys, with the Beatles. So that was probably a big influence on him. But a couple of the other ones really rubbed me the wrong way. One Republic's frontman, Ryan Tedder, who was born in 1979. And then, of course, Janelle Monáe. What is Janelle Monáe's impact and relevance in this society? Why is Janelle Monáe, why am I pummeled to death? She's in Knives Out movies. I and she's in commercials. I can't stand the fact that this woman, I guess I can't call her a woman because she's binary or whatever they want to call it. And that's exactly why she's in this, is because now they've checked their politically correct box. But Janelle Monáe, kids, was born in 1985. Okay? She wasn't even really old enough to understand Kokomo which they do not cover in this documentary. It plays over the closing credits. She wasn't even old enough to listen to Kokomo. She was what, 3 years old when Kokomo came out? Yet we got to listen to her talk about the influence the Beach Boys had on her and how she was shedding tears when they went to a thrift shop and they bought Beach Boys albums, which would have been what, in the mid 90s? Give me a break. This is not the type of person, the era that you should be bringing in to discuss the Beach Boys. But you're pandering to a younger generation. It's terrible filmmaking. It's terrible documentary filmmaking. And good for Janelle Monáe if she really honestly did cry when she listened to the Beach Boys. But the fact that she obviously did it in the mid 90s or later makes this completely irrelevant when the documentary doesn't cover anything with the Beach Boys beyond 1980. Same with One Republic's Ryan Tedder. They're out of place. It's a stupid, terrible PC contrivance that Disney obviously forced in to this documentary. But watch it. Watch Stop Making Sense. Watch The Beach Boys on Disney Plus. Listen to Collective Soul. Here to Eternity. I told you this week's breakdown was going long. Doc Brown waiting patiently for me in the Fortress of Rock garage, sitting next to the rock and roll DeLorean, tapping his foot impatiently in his lab coat as I'm coming, Doc. I'm coming. Heading out to the rock and roll time stream for I Want to Go Back. Another cheesy, quick music interlude, and Doc Brown and I will be right back. All right, wow, I am all talked out after that extra long breakdown segment. So let's let Doc Brown take over. What? What? He's shaking his head, saying no, he wants nothing to do with this podcast other than driving the rock and roll DeLorean through the rock and roll time stream at 1.21 gigawatts. So it must be time for I Want to Go Back, our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. I'm, of course, I'm your host, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Before Doc Brown gets the DeLorean up to speed, let's take care of some business. First and foremost, sources. Let's do sources first. This all doesn't come off the top of my head, even though I have an amazing vault in my head of useless pop culture knowledge. Now, I don't think it's useless. Rock and roll is king. So the more I know about rock and roll, the better for me, the better for you. But I do need help. My three main sources for a lot of the stories in News of the World and here in I Want to Go Back come from UltimateClassicRock.com, ThisDayInMusic.com, and VanHalenNewsDesk.com. And I've been talking about how behind the scenes recording situation is in flux. It's changing. We just got an extension from Spotify, so we're going to keep with what we're doing here, what you've been used to for the last 3 or 4 months. That will stay intact until mid-July now. But that has no impact on where you can listen to us. It's the same platforms that it's been the last month. Spotify, Pocket Casts, Apple, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Amazon Music, Castbox, and Audible. And then we have our Facebook page, 2 fun things we do every weekend, in addition to dropping the link to the latest podcast episode. Friday night, almost simultaneously, with that podcast link drop is the Weekend Rock Project. This weekend, we're looking for your best rock and roll songs, your favorite rock and roll songs featuring the word stop and or the word go. Stop, go. Stop and go. Red light, green light, stop, go. That is your rule, that is your restriction for this week. No other driving words, no other traffic terms will be allowed. Stop, go. That's it. And then Sunday, of course, you will get a new song, a new video from me, the Maestro. Sunday afternoon is New Music Sunday, where I will pluck a video from YouTube. It might be a lyric video, it might be a visualizer, it might be a full-fledged, fully produced video, but it will be out there mid-afternoon on Sunday for you to listen to. I think I have a very good idea of where I'm going this week. Not trying to spoil things for Wrap It Up, but not a lot of new songs out there, so I might have to go with something a little different this coming Sunday. So stay tuned for that. All right, let's start off with anniversaries here. On May the 31st, the final day of May. May the 31st, 2000. Johnny Taylor died. Johnny Taylor, well known in the U.S. for his 1976 number one hit. There's disco again. Disco Lady. A lot of disco going on here this week, kids. A lot of disco. Disco Lady by Johnny Taylor. May the 31st, 1989. Now, I like David Bowie, but I am not a huge fan. I call David Bowie in my collection, as vast and expansive as it is, a greatest hits artist. In that I don't own Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. I have maybe a couple of his later solo albums from the 80s. But I am not a David Bowie fanatic. I don't own Diamond Dogs. But I will tell you what I did like, because it was more in tune with my musical taste, when he formed Tin Machine. Tin Machine put out 2 albums where Bowie got a little bit heavier in terms of rock. They had the group dynamic. I hate to say again, but again, something we talk about, it seems like incessantly, week in and week out. The group dynamic brought something different out in David Bowie, and I connected with it. I thought Tin Machine was awesome. Absolutely awesome. Even though they were short-lived, only a few years together, the 2 albums, as I mentioned. But on this day in 1989, Tin Machine made their live debut at the International Music Awards in New York. On this day, May the 31st, 1982, the legendary REM signed a 5-album deal with IRS Records, helping to bolster the independent record scene. IRS became a force to be reckoned with for at least a decade or so, thanks in large part to REM. Of course, they later on ditched IRS for a major label, so there you go. On this day, May the 31st, 1980, Funkytown. Funkytown. How awesome was the song Funkytown? How many different bands and performers have redone, remade Lips Inc.'s Funkytown? But the original The awesome original version from Lip Sync was the number one U.S. single on this day in 1980. We'll go back to 1977, May the 31st, the BBC banned God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols. And there were a lot of radio stations that followed suit. And it was still a monstrous hit, and to this day, a legendary song in the annals of rock and roll. 1 year earlier, May the 31st, 1976, The Who entered the Guinness Book of World Records for the loudest rock performance of all time, over 120 decibels, at a stadium called the Valley in London. Then finally, and to me, probably the most important of all of these anniversaries, May the 31st, 1966. On this day, filming began on the Monkees TV series. Peter, Mickey, Davy, and Mike. One of the biggest influences in my young life, musically and in terms of TV. I love the TV show and I love the music. The perfect amalgam of entertainment in terms of music and comedy. Doesn't get any better than the Monkees. All right, birthdays on May the 31st. Born on this day, May the 31st, 1964. MC Daryl McDaniels. If you look at the letters, kids, you can figure this out real quick. One half in the title, the titular of Run DMC. Born on this day. Very underrated. Let me just put this out there right now. I can't even get through this because I know people bash this guy. And he's not the greatest of all time. He is one of those artists that epitomizes the 80s in style and substance. Some good, some bad. But legendary nonetheless. Born on this day, May the 31st, 1962. I wear my sunglasses at night. Yes, Corey Hart, born on this day in 1962. And he actually had a lot more top 40 hits than you would think. I believe he had 9 top 40 hits in the U.S. Born on this day, May the 31st, 1952. One of the most prolific songwriters in rock history, Jim Valance. Probably most well known for his partnership, his collaborations with Bryan Adams, but he also, among many others, many other artists involved here, but he wrote songs for Ozzy Osbourne, Kiss, the Scorpions, Aerosmith, and Europe. Again, among many other artists. So Jim Valance, one of, again, the most prolific songwriters in rock history, born on this day in 1952. Born on this day, May the 31st, 1948. You guys know I love some ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. On their farewell tour here in 2024, Mike Edwards played, it's an orchestra, keep this in mind. Mike Edwards played cello for ELO from 1972 to 1975. Born on this day, May the 31st, 1948. I'll have an argument and I'll have a disagreement about this. And we can go toe to toe and fight it out, and that's fine. Because I've seen a lot of people proclaim this man as the greatest drummer in rock history. I will argue and I will dispute. Today is the birthday of John Bonham, of course, the legendary drummer for Led Zeppelin. Nobody is disparaging his legend. He is one of the greatest drummers in rock history, but I think Who fans might have an issue when they bring in Keith Moon. I personally don't see how, in any way, shape, or form, you say anyone was ever better than the late, great Neil Peart of Rush. I don't even think it's close, but that's my opinion. And as I've always said, you have an opinion and you're entitled to it, and I'm not saying you're wrong. There's people out there who would say Alex Van Halen. I'm a Van Halen fanatic. Alex Van Halen is nowhere close to John Bonham, Keith Moon, or Neil Peart. But it's an opinion, not a fact. It's a matter of taste and opinion. But that being said, I don't see how you pick John Bonham over Neil Peart. Then finally, wrapping up our birthdays here on May the 31st. Born on this day in 1938. For all the hippies out there, yep, been talking a lot of disco. Now we're going to talk more about the hippies. Peter Yarrow, of course, part of the famous, legendary trio, Peter, Paul, and Mary. He was born on this day in 1938. So there you go, kids. Doc Brown, after waiting patiently for me in the garage as I went too long with Breakdown, now doing a U-turn in the rock and roll time stream, taking us back to the garage at the Fortress of Rock. We'll pull up the drawbridge, start to shut down everything. The lights go out. Time to get a little more mellow here later on Friday night, as you should as well. But we are not done yet. One last cheesy music interlude, and I know you're so excited that we're going to keep doing that for another month. You were hoping, oh, at least those are going away. Nope, 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 nope. It's better than the minute-long droning promos that I used to do, right? Outdated droning promos. You've got to admit that. These are only 2, 3, 4 seconds. Quick, painless, ripping the Band-Aid right off. Next segment. And I still don't like the fact we're not going to have a nice clean transition from one segment to another here in July. I am still trying to work on how to fix that. But until those problems present themselves now next month, instead of this month, in June, we have a reprieve, and you get one last segment here on the Fortress of Rock on May the 31st. Wrap It Up is coming up next. All right, now we wrap up the merry, merry month of May. Just a few hours left here in May of 2024. It is time to wrap it up here on the Fortress of Rock, our tribute to the fabulous Thunderbirds. I am your host, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. You are who you are, as always. Unbelievably appreciative and glad to have you listening each and every Friday night, wherever you are, whoever you may be. Now, wrap it up, of course. We talk about what we're going to be listening to and reviewing in the next month here on the Fortress. But of course, we also have our new feature, our tribute to the Billboard charts, our top album, and our top songs of the week. But we start off with the next month. Our agenda here on the Fortress of Rock. Next week, this got messed up. I will admit it. This has gotten messed up to a point. To a point. I really wanted to next week take you guys back in time. No, not with Doc Brown. He'll probably get mad about that. He'll probably want extra pay. But we're going to break the rules next week, and we're going to go back and listen to a couple of my artists from the 80s. Artists that I love, I respect, I admire, and listening to some outtakes and some rare solo material. And we're still planning on doing this, but things have gotten a little bit more complicated. So next week, I'm still planning on Rick Emmett, of course, of Triumph. Once he left Triumph in the early 90s, now, of course, Triumph made all their money, made their legend in the 80s, but in the 90s, Rick Emmett broke away from Triumph, went out on his own, and now there is a new CD release called Diamonds, which collects the best of what they're calling his hard rock years. It is supposedly out today as we're taping on May the 31st. I have got supposedly again, I have got a physical copy of the CD in the mail coming to me this Monday. But Spotify did not get any kind of an agreement with this. I think it's on a smaller label, so I cannot listen to it ahead of time, at least on Spotify. But if the album shows up on my doorstep on Monday, I will still give you my review next Friday. If. Wishes and butts, candies and nuts. Also, wanted to go back in time and discuss some rare live tracks and studio outtakes from Rat. Now, rarities, again, we can review this because it was technically released almost 15 years ago, over 15 years ago. But they're re-releasing it in physical form. Now, they've delayed it. It was supposed to be out today, May the 31st. Now, I have seen where it's been delayed and pushed back 2 weeks. It's coming out in the middle of June. But I made a promise. The old version, which is looking like it's the same as the new version, is out there on Spotify. So I will review that for you as well. It's, again, jumbled, messed up, screwed up, but I will keep my promise. So 95% chance, 95%, like a weatherman, 95% chance of rain, and then it's sunny, or vice versa. Rick Emmett's Diamonds and Rat's Rarities next week, episode 147 on June the 7th, 2024, here on the Fortress of Rock. In 2 weeks, Bon Jovi's brand new album, Forever. Yes, I have my problems with Bon Jovi, so I will do my best to not go into this tainted, negative. But we also have another concert review. Concert season kind of kicks back in. Really, for me, looking at the agenda, once we hit mid-July, then we're going to have concerts for you every week or two, all the way through into October. So a slow start to the summer, and we have the double shot with the Big Growl and Judas Priest. Then we will now, episode 148 on June the 14th, have Styx, Foreigner, John Wade, the opening night of their tour in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Then in 3 weeks, Mike Campbell, of course, Tom Petty's right-hand man for so many decades, his band, the Dirty Knobs, their brand new album Kind of like Collective Soul. They threw it out there. They said, here's a single. It's coming out in a month. Deal with it. Not a 6-month run up, 6-month fanfare, 4 singles released. In some ways, I admire that. I do. So the new album from Mike Campbell and the Dirty Knobs, Vagabonds, Virgins, and Misfits will be featured on episode 149, June the 21st, 2024. After that, I don't know. Maybe by then I'll be done with the Bon Jovi documentary. We're still looking at that. We're still looking at finishing up Thank You, Good Night. I can't, there's only so much I can take of looking at John Bon Jovi's pathetic mug as I can't sing anymore, but I'll take your money as I go out on tour, even though I know I can't sing. And then Richie Sambora, who, I'm sorry, he was dismissed from the band based on the fact he had substance abuse issues. And in these interviews for this documentary, he seems like he's been drinking. He's slurring his words, unless there's something else going on that I don't know about. We've also got Mark Knopfler, that Record Store Day release, the 4-song EP, The Boy. We might throw that in there next month. That would be June the 28th, maybe. Because we're going to hit a dead spot from the end of June, probably through until the beginning of August minimum. Might have a concert in there, but otherwise, don't be surprised if some of this stuff I push back just because I'm trying to fill in each and every episode. If I'd been smart, which I'm not, I would have waited on one of these movie reviews. But I didn't really want to push back the Beach Boys a month or Stop Making Sense a month. Didn't make a lot of sense. Huh. Get it? Sense. Stop Making Sense. The Maestro makes no sense. And then I've still got a couple songs from the Hold Steady to review. So we will catch up on all of this. That's it. There's really not a lot else out there. But before we go, we have our tribute to the Billboard charts back when they were good. Back when they were good. And they mattered and they meant something, unlike now, where Taylor Swift has the top 47,000 songs each and every week in the top 400 albums. We do things a little bit more like they're supposed to be done with the Fortress of Rock charts. What have I been listening to the past week? What album tops my spin rate? What songs are the songs that I love the most that I have been listening to? It's all about Collective Soul this week, which you would expect considering the featured album review and breakdown was Here to Eternity, and that is our number 1 album of the week. Collective Soul's double album, Here to Eternity, number 1 on the Fortress of Rock album charts this week. The top 2 songs also from Collective Soul, also off of Here to Eternity. The 2 songs I have really been into over the last week, Keep It On Track and Hey Man. Those are my 2 favorites outside of the first 2 singles that have already been released and reviewed. So, it's all Collective Soul, Here to Eternity, top album, Keep It On Track, and Hey Man, our top songs of the week here on the Fortress of Rock. And that's going to do it. Time for me to enjoy my Friday night. Time for you to enjoy your Friday night. Just had Memorial Day weekend. Hope you had a safe, fun time with your family, your friends, with the graduates, with the proms, with all that stuff. settling back down to normal, although summer is just beginning. Hallelujah. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones, your kids. Love the one you're with, whether you're committed or not. I don't care who it is, race, creed, gender, color. Don't care. Love the one you're with. I'm the Maestro, Kevin Crane. You are who you are. 7 days from now, a new episode. We can discuss the music we all love, rock and roll. Once again, I started off with the devil horns you can't see, and I'll end with the devil horns you can't see. Love you, kids. Have a great night. Have a great week. Talk to you in 7. Peace out.